I definitely did not think that I would be an artist. In fact, I almost graduated with a business degree before one class totally, completely changed my direction. I love hearing other people's stories of how they got into art, so hopefully you enjoy listening to mine. Growing up, I definitely enjoyed creative things. I loved making things with my hands, doing crafts, but I wasn't really drawing that much. I, liked coloring, or if I was taking notes in biology when I was in high school, I was making my notes colorful and pretty, but I wasn't taking art classes or drawing at all, and I definitely never imagined that I would pursue a career in art. I did actually take a couple of art classes in middle school, and I do remember feeling proud of some of my projects. For a long time, pretty much up until I decided to start pursuing art, I really believed that being good at art was just something that you were born with, and it wasn't really a skill you could learn. And now I know that's definitely not true, and I'm always trying to remind my students of that if they're feeling discouraged. It is a skill that you can learn, you just have to put in the work. And when I look back at my art from 10 years ago, the improvement is really just from putting in the hours and learning over time. Obviously, some natural talent helps, but honestly, just being passionate and consistent is really what makes a difference. Another thing that held me back in the beginning from pursuing art more is I had this idea that if I couldn't draw something just out of the thin air of my imagination, then it wasn't real art. I remember when I was I don't know, I had to have been 12 or something. I was drawing a cat, but looking at a picture of a cat. And I was actually pretty proud of this drawing. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. But then I was like, well, but I looked at something when I drew it, so I cheated and it's not real art. I don't know why, but I had that in my mind when I was in middle school and high school. So I feel like that really stopped me from kind of following it more as something I was interested in, which is kind of silly looking back on now. So I head off to college and I decide to major in business. A lot of my family owns businesses or is entrepreneurial. That's a lot of what I had seen growing up, so it just kind of felt like natural next step. I thought, okay, I'll get a business degree, but I'll do something creative. So I'll open an artsy coffee shop or something like that. I like the idea of making something visually interesting and working creatively, but I just don't think I even knew that that was what I wanted yet. The first 2 years of college were mostly general education courses that everybody had to take, but by sophomore year, I was getting a little bit deeper into my business classes, and I was really not enjoying them. They were so boring to me. I just was not having fun, and I was just thinking forward to 2 more years of these classes. And that spring, I studied abroad in South Africa. And while I was there, I had to take a general education art class, and I loved it. I was definitely not making amazing art, but it was good enough that I felt proud of what I was doing. And for the first time, I was like, maybe I could actually be good at this someday. Just the contrast between the joy and interest and happiness I felt in that art class versus the boredom I felt in my business classes was kind of hard to ignore. So I started thinking, okay, what if I just add an art minor for fun? I can still do my business classes, but I have some fun art classes in there to kind of, help me enjoy school a little bit more. So I reached out to my academic advisors, but they told me that I wouldn't be able to graduate on time if I did that, which was a deal breaker for me. So I'm kind of trying to think through other options, and then that's when I thought about, all right, what if I just changed my major entirely to art and I minored in business instead? And because I'm kind of a practical person, I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to major in art, then I'll just become an art teacher. That's a reliable career. Now looking back, I'm just like, why did I even consider that? I had no experience. I was taking this intro to art course, but I'm not very good. I just am enjoying it. And I'm like, yes, I should definitely teach other people how to make art, even though I don't even really know how to yet. And I'm halfway through college and I should switch from business to art. It was really not the most logical decision making, but obviously looking back, I'm so glad that I did it. Art is still a huge part of my life, and really I just think it was God kind of guiding me through that. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense that I did that. So I called my parents from South Africa. I told them about my new plan. I think they were just so confused. Like, what? Do you even like art? Pretty much everybody that I told that I was changing my major to art, like even when I came back to school that next semester, they were just like, oh, I didn't know you liked that. Like, no one was saying, yes, makes sense. Like, that makes sense for you. Follow your dreams. I mean, people were nice about it, but they were pretty much just like, oh, I didn't know that you drew. Like, is that something that you do? And really, I was like, well, not really. Because really, I wasn't even really good at art. I didn't have like some secret hidden talent. I just really, really liked it and I wanted to pursue it. I guess I was just, following my passions. The good thing was, since I had knocked out so many general education courses early on, I pretty much just spent the next 2 years almost exclusively taking art classes. I did have to take a couple summer classes as well. And as I went throughout my classes, I just really continued to love it, and that's what really kept me going. I will say though, since I had to cram so many art classes into those 2 years, I spent so much time in my studio on campus. I didn't know this when I originally signed up for classes, but a lot of the art classes are 3 hours long twice a week because it's a studio class, so you're working on your art during the class. It's really common for art classes to be 3 hours long, but I didn't know that when I signed up for them. So I remember my first semester, my Tuesdays and Thursdays were literally three-hour classes in a row. So like 9 hours of class. But honestly, I really enjoyed it. A lot of that, I was just working in my studio. I would meet with my professor, or maybe we'd have a class critique, but it was actually really fun. Honestly, looking back now, I would just kill to have 9 hours a day to create art. Like, that sounds ideal. Those 2 years, I did struggle a little bit just because I felt so behind. A lot of the other students in the program had been doing art for years, so I just felt like I was not very good compared to them, and I was really behind in my technique and skill. So I really tried to just focus on myself and the fact that I enjoyed it and it didn't matter my skill level, I would get better. I also would focus on certain quotes. Like, there's a Van Gogh quote that says something along the lines of, if you hear a voice within you saying you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. I also would think about how Van Gogh, he didn't even start painting until he was 27, which, okay, now I'm 28, so that really doesn't seem that old now. But when I was 20 or 19 in college, it seemed old. And he's obviously very successful and talented, and there's lots of other artists like that they didn't start art until they were, much later into adulthood. So all of that helped me not feel so behind, but I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I really didn't even refer to myself as an artist for years, honestly. I don't even think I really started to until I was an art teacher or a couple years into teaching, just because, I don't know, I felt like I hadn't been doing it long enough to call myself that. At my school, anyone could major in art, but you did have to pass something called the Review of Artistic Competency in order to continue to the upper division classes and then eventually get your degree. You kind of put together this presentation of your work and then presented it to a panel of professors who decided if you would pass or not. When I did the review, I had really only been making art for I don't know, not even a year. I did not have much to show for myself. I remember putting together my presentation. I was like, I really don't have much for this portfolio. But luckily I did pass, but I passed, I think the wording was pass with hesitancy. So it was something like that. I guess I barely passed. But honestly, makes sense. I had almost no portfolio, so I'm surprised they even let me pass. But it was very nice of them. Hopefully they just, saw something in me, or maybe they felt bad for me, I'm not sure, but either way, I made it through. Fast forward a couple of years, I graduated with my bachelor's of fine arts in art with a concentration in drawing and painting. So meaning most of my upper division classes were specifically in drawing and painting. I learned a lot of really good basics during those years, and I feel like I also made a lot of good progress in kind of figuring out consistencies in my work and style, and also the type of art I like to create. I still feel like Although I did a lot of like ink and watercolor in college, but I still do a lot of similar stuff today. I really prefer working on paper than canvas. So I do a lot of like gouache on paper. I love colored pencils, ink, watercolor. So a lot of those things I kind of figured out about myself then are still true today. From there, I followed through with becoming an art teacher. In California, the credentialing process is kind of intense. I had to go through a program after college in order to get my teaching credential. Then I just also did my master's during that program. I got a credential in single subject art, which means I'm qualified to teach any age level or grade level, but I can only teach art. And my master's is in teaching. So then I landed my first job teaching middle school art, and I ended up teaching there for about 3 years. That's my story from never thinking that I would have a career in art ever to being an art teacher. I guess like the moral of the story overall is just that if you're someone that loves art or just being creative, but you feel like you're starting too late or you're too old or you're not good enough, don't let it stop you. If it's something that you really, really enjoy, still pursue it. And that doesn't even have to mean like pursuing it as a career. It could even just be taking local art classes or pursuing it as a hobby. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about my journey. I also haven't even mentioned this artwork, but I talked about it a little bit in my last video. It's a portrait of my daughter. I had a photo of her asleep in her car seat, and then I kind of added this whole dream land around it. So it's pretty much done here. I might add a couple of finishing touches. But yeah, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments if you relate to my journey at all, or a little bit about your journey to become an artist.